Have you ever tried to change a habit and your brain replied something like, "Nice idea, but no thanks"? Like, "I'll wake up early tomorrow." And your brain is like, "Sure, let's talk after one more episode." If change were easy, no one would be watching this video right now. But relax, it's not a lack of willpower, it's neuroscience. And today, I'm going to explain why your brain hates change. Every year, millions of people set goals. Change careers, quit a bad habit, learn something new. And every year, most of them quit before they even get close. Not because they're weak, but because their brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do: hate change. Your brain doesn't care about your New Year's resolutions or personal growth. It cares about one thing: survival. And to the brain, the familiar feels safer than the better. In this video, I'll show you why your brain resists change so strongly, what's actually happening inside your brain at a neurological level, and most importantly, how to work with your brain instead of fighting it. You'll learn how to break mental patterns without suffering, how to train your brain to adapt, how to change in a way your brain actually accepts. Because trying to change by sheer, "this time I'll do it" energy is the fastest way to quit again. Before blaming your brain, there's something important you need to understand. Your brain isn't evil. It's ancient. Very ancient. Your brain was programmed in a time when your biggest concern wasn't answering emails, hitting KPIs, or building a fitness routine. It was not becoming dinner for a bear. Back in cave-dwelling times, change meant danger. A strange noise equals predator. A new path equals risk. Or different fruit equals maybe poison. So the brain learned one basic rule: if it's working, don't touch it. This is survival mode. It exists to keep you alive, not fulfilled, productive, and glowing at 6 a.m. on a Monday. And here's the funny part. That prehistoric brain is still inside you. Only now, the bear looks like a difficult decision, a career change, a new habit, or stepping out of your comfort zone. To the brain, a threat is a threat. It doesn't matter if it's a wild animal or a new project. That's why when you try to change, your brain makes you feel tired, creates resistance, activates fear, and pulls you back to what's familiar. Not because you're weak, but because your brain still thinks you live in a cave. So yes, your brain was designed to survive, not to evolve spiritually at 5 a.m. in an ice bath on a Monday. And its favorite tool for survival? Predictable routines. Routines reduce uncertainty, and uncertainty costs energy. Your brain hates spending energy. In fact, inertia might be its favorite law of physics. When you repeat a behavior, like eating the same breakfast every day, your brain builds beautifully paved neural highways. This work is handled by the basal ganglia. Free translation: the automatic comfy department, also known as the comfort zone. That's why you spend half your day on autopilot without realizing it. It's not laziness, it's neural efficiency. Now, when you try to change something, like, "Tomorrow I'll wake up early, work out, and meditate," your brain goes into, "Okay, let's talk about this, sweetheart," because change activates the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for conscious decisions and flexibility. And that area burns a lot of energy. In short, thinking hurts, literally. And as if that weren't enough, the amygdala joins the party. Yes, that's really its name. Its job is simple: detect threats. And for the amygdala, anything unfamiliar is reason enough to sound the alarm. So even if you want to change, to your brain, uncertainty equals risk. Different is synonymous of suspicious. And old routine is a safe zone. That's why change feels so hard. Not because you're weak, but because your brain is trying to protect you in the most dramatic way possible. Old habits are like sitting in a soft, cozy armchair. New habits feel like sitting on a broken plastic chair. That's because the brain learns through repetition. There's a principle in neuroscience called Hebbian learning. Neurons that fire together, wire together. The more you repeat something, the more automatic it becomes. Over time, Old habits turn into fast, efficient neural highways. And under stress, guess where the brain runs? Yep, the road it already knows. New habits, on the other hand, require attention, effort, energy, patience. At first, everything feels awkward, not because it's wrong, but because the road isn't paved yet. Example: you decide to stop scrolling your phone before bed and start reading instead. The first nights you feel irritated, restless, an urge to check your phone just one more time. That's your brain being forced to invest energy in a path that barely exists. But here's the key part. Every repetition smooths the road. And there's another character in this story: dopamine. If an old habit gave you fast rewards, like endless scrolling, your brain learned, this path feels good immediately. So when you try to change, it pulls you back. The brain doesn't look for the best habit, it looks for the fastest reward. Beyond brain chemistry, there's another thing sabotaging your change: mental shortcuts. They have a fancy name: cognitive biases. I prefer invisible brakes. They exist to make decisions easier. The problem? They often make change much harder. Status quo bias. It's the brain saying, it's bad, but at least it's familiar. Even if change would be better, the brain prefers things as they are. Loss aversion. It's the famous, what if it goes wrong? The brain fears loss more than it desires gain. A possible loss weighs more than a possible win. Confirmation bias. It's the stubborn brain mode. If you believe change is risky, your brain will ignore success stories and focus only on failures. Put the three together, and boom, you're stuck. Classic example. Someone hates their job but thinks, better stay. What if it's worse out there? They overestimate the risk of leaving and completely ignore people who changed careers and succeeded. That's the brain protecting familiar mental models. And when uncertainty appears, the brain panics and looks for order. Studies show high uncertainty increases cognitive stress, and to reduce it, the brain clings to familiar routines like anchors. In short, the more uncertain the situation, the more the brain wants the familiar, even if the familiar isn't that great. Imagine you decide to run every morning. The idea sounds amazing, right? Until the alarm goes off at 6 a.m. You wake up and your brain says, oh, heck no. It's an internal debate. On one side, the prefrontal cortex is like, yay, growth, health, new habits. On the other, the basal ganglia says, but we've always stayed in bed. And we're still alive, you know? Meanwhile, the amygdala jumps in. Okay, this is new, therefore super dangerous. And to complete the chaos, the reward system hesitates to release dopamine without familiar cues. Result? Change feels exhausting, uncomfortable, and way harder than it should. You're rerouting internal traffic. But with repetition, the new path strengthens. And one day, that morning run becomes automatic. So how to train your brain to accept change? The good news? Your brain can change at any age. Did you know that? That's called neuroplasticity. Translation? Nothing in your brain is set in stone. But here's what no one tells you. Change only works when it doesn't feel like a threat. If you try to change everything at once, your brain goes into defense mode. So the strategy is different. 1. Bet on micro changes. Forget, I'll work out 5 times a week. Your brain deletes that instantly. Try 10 squats after brushing your teeth. Sound silly? Perfect. Your brain loves silly. It's not scary. 2. Use rewards, even tiny ones. The brain learns through dopamine. A check mark, a short playlist, a done feeling. The brain doesn't judge the reward. It just asks, was it worth it? 3. Visualize before doing. Imagining the behavior activates many of the same brain areas as doing it. Mental rehearsal prepares the path. 4. Use everyday triggers, also known as habit stacking. Don't create habits out of thin air. Attach the new habit to an existing one. After coffee, meditate. After opening your laptop, plan your day. If the old habit exists, resistance drops. 5. Repeat. No drama. Repetition builds neural pathways. At first, it feels forced. Later, it becomes automatic. It's not motivation, it's repetition. If change were just willpower, we'd be done already. But there's a brain skill that makes all the difference: cognitive flexibility. Basically, it's the brain's ability to shift gears. It helps you to see alternatives, reframe mistakes, and adjust the plan without quitting. So, for example, instead of, "It failed, I give up," a flexible brain says, "Okay, what if I try differently?" And yes, this is trainable. You strengthen flexibility by challenging your brain to solve problems, recognize patterns, switch tasks, and by changing how you interpret situations. Basically, it's teaching the brain not to freeze just because Plan A failed. And honestly, I think that's kind of beautiful, you know? Almost poetic. It's taking a difficult situation and changing the lens. That's emotional intelligence. Nowadays, there are digital tools and apps that can help with this. Not medical treatment, not miracles, just science-based activities that help the brain practice adapting without panic. The more you train mental flexibility, the less your brain sees change as a threat, and the more it sees possibility. Let's talk time. How long does change really take? Fair warning, it takes longer than you think. You may have heard the 21 days myth. Sorry to break it to you, that's motivational bullshit, not scientific. Research shows habit formation takes about 66 days on average. Some habits take even much longer, even over 200 days. The brain doesn't work with urgency, it works with repetition. What matters most isn't speed, it's consistency. At first, it feels awkward and forced. That's normal. Each repetition pulls a new thread. At first, it's loose and fragile. Over time, the threads intertwine. One day, the behavior becomes part of the brain's default fabric. Not fast, but solid. If you want a simple path to overcome resistance without fighting your brain, pay attention to this checklist, baby. 1. Name the resistance. What are you avoiding exactly? 2. Simplify. What's the smallest version of the change? 3. Link to a trigger. Attach it to an existing habit. 4. Add a reward. Celebrate, even if it's silly. 5. Track consistency. Visible progress reinforces memory. 6. Reflect and adjust. What worked? What didn't? That's not failure, it's fine-tuning. But what science says about why your brain resists change. Before calling yourself lazy or unmotivated, breathe. Science has some interesting and inconvenient explanations. 1. Graybill talks about habits and the basal ganglia. The brain loves shortcuts. Once automated, it resists extra work. 2. Kanyas, on cognitive rigidity, says a repetitive thinking and resistance to novelty make change harder. 3. Bunzek and Duzel says the brain hates change, but loves novelty with curiosity and learning. It's called novelty and reward. 4. Karbach and Verhagen says flexibility can be trained. Your brain isn't fixed, it's trainable, even in adulthood. In conclusion, what the brain truly loves is certainty. Change threatens that. That's why it resists. That's why it clings to the familiar. That's why it whispers, "Not today." But once you understand that whisper, everything shifts. Resistance stops looking like failure and starts looking like a signal. Your brain needs structure, repetition, and small wins, not pressure or force. The good news? You're not stuck. You're just wired to be careful. And with practice, patience, and strategy, even the most change-averse brain learns to move. Then move again. And suddenly, you're already there.